Welcome to my multivariate regression with controls entitled Feelings Towards Minority Groups in Canada by POL242Burnaby2013. The concept I will be measuring is feelings towards minority groups. The dataset and the number of respondents is listed below. The independent variables measured will be tolerance of ethnic group, level of education, and political orientation. Canada's ethnic composition is constantly changing with a wide range of groups represented in the population. Numerous studies have been conducted in the understanding and promotion of positive relations amongst groups in Canada. Canadians take their pride in presumed tolerance and diversity in the absence of prejudice towards minorities, as stated by SS and Garner. Research shows that Canadians in general have positive feelings towards minority groups in Canada. However, there are certain social indicators that can explain variance in feelings. Canadians have attempted to increase tolerance and reduce tensions through methods such as the adoption of social programs and the practice of multiculturalism. The goal of this analysis is to see which factors determine positive or negative feelings towards minority groups in Canada. The methods used are listed below. An index was constructed and a reliability analysis was conducted for the raw dependent variable measuring feelings of like or dislike towards minority groups. The questions included feelings towards Aboriginals, gays and lesbians, feminists, and racial minorities. Respondents were asked to rate feelings on a scale of 0 to 100, with 0 meaning really dislike and 100 meaning really like. The index produced a Cronbach alpha score of 0.7906, showing that these indicators provide a good measure for the concept. A frequency distribution was conducted on the unrecoded dependent variable. The categories range from low to high at 0 to 8. The dependent variable produced a mean of 8, indicating that the dependent variable falls on the higher level of positive feelings towards minority groups, and the Canadians generally like minorities. The skew is negative 1.57 and the kurtosis is 1.61, indicating a right skewed distribution curve with scores concentrated at the high level. The standard deviation shows scores deviate from the mean by 2. SS and Garner state in their article that Canadians do not expect groups to assimilate into Canadian culture, but rather practice multiculturalism. Robinson looks into survey research on various domestic and international issues, more specifically attitudes towards ethnic relations and communities, concluding that individuals with high levels of education had more positive opinions on social issues. Penner argues that political values can shape attitudes towards minority groups, arguing that political values have a strong influence on minority integration and acceptance. The control variable chosen is province of residence. The elaboration hypothesis presumes that partial relationships will be weaker than the original relationship. Therefore, the effective region of residence as a control variable will result in a relationship of explanation. Region of residence is causally prior to both feelings and the independent variables. Political orientation, education, and concentration of ethnic groups can all be affected or determined provincially. An example is the province of Quebec. Quebecers are less inclined than other provinces to accept diversity in response to preserving Francophone culture and language, as stated by Berry and Rudolph. Below is an elaboration diagram showing the dependent variables and the independent variables as a result of explanation. The correlation matrix shows the direction that each relationship is positive. As the independent variable increases, so does the dependent variable. The Pearson's correlation coefficient for each independent variable was relatively weak yet acceptable. The significance for each variable was at a p-value of 0.00, meaning that it is unlikely that the results were due to sampling error. The R-square value for the ethnic tolerance explains 4% of variation, as well as for education, and political orientation explains 1% of variation. From this information, you can conclude that ethnic tolerance and education are better predictors for feelings towards minority groups. The Pearson's R value of the ethnic is 0.204 and education is the same, reflecting that correlation is mainly significant to the study that the political orientation is at 1.113 and has low level of significance to the study. The multivariate regression displays indicators explaining approximately 8% of positive feelings towards minority groups in Canada. Interpreting the b-values, the results show that feelings towards minority groups depend on all three independent variables. Therefore, the higher the level of tolerance for ethnicities, the more positive feelings are towards minority groups. The beta values also show that political orientation at the lowest value of 0.075 has the weakest relationship with the dependent variable. The tolerance levels between 0.95 and 0.97, showing that there is no problem of collinearity due to correlation between the independent variables. Looking at the hierarchical regression table, province of residence was controlled for Quebec. Once the control variable was implemented, the B and beta values for tolerance and ethnicities and the level of education decreased, while political orientation increased. This shows that in Quebec, political orientation is significant, determined in positive feelings towards minorities in comparison with tolerance and education. The explained variance increased by 3%, indicating that indicators explain approximately 11% of variance in feelings towards minority groups when controlling for region in comparison to 8. The B value for the province dummy variable is negative, indicating that there is a decrease in the positive feeling for minority groups in Quebec compared to other regions of Canada. The explained variance increased 8% to 11% after the introduction of the control variable. Therefore, indicators explain approximately 11% of feelings towards minority groups in Canada when controlling for region. Significance overall for the equation is not due to sampling error. The B value showed that there is a minor increase in positive feelings towards minority groups for every one category increase of tolerance, level of education, and political orientation. Controlling for the dummy variable of Quebec for province of residence, the results showed that decrease in positive feelings towards ethnic minorities at negative 0.225. The beta value showed the ethnic tolerance and education have a greater impact on feelings towards minority groups. The tolerance level is above 0.96, indicating that there is no issue of collinearity. The resulting measures of association from partial relationships do not differ that much from the original relationships. Examining the cross-tabulations of the relationships of those that reside in Quebec is slightly weaker than those that reside outside of Quebec. Using the rule of thirds, the results show that controlling for province of residence creates a case of replication for ethnic tolerance, level of education, and political orientation. This is contrary to the original hypothesis. In conclusion, the original relationships between feelings of minority groups and political orientation, education, and tolerance holds people residing across all provinces. The regression correlation analysis shows tolerance for ethnicities and level of education has a minimal impact on feelings towards minorities in Canada.